Hello, this is Nathan Stooke. I'm the CEO of Wisper, and today I have a special guest. It's my first time I've ever had a guest kind of on this the productions we're doing, and I'm so excited. It's somebody who's near and dear to my heart, and we met. I think it's been 9, 10, maybe even 12 months ago, and it's kind of funny how we met. We met on LinkedIn. Something which he professes to barely use, but he has a profile up there. And I was searching for an executive coach. I had gone through several executive coaches, and when I meant gone through is I typically outgrew them, right? So I had a company that was a $2 million company, and I had an executive coach that had run one that was 10 million. And then as I grew, I tended to outgrow a lot of those executive coaches. So I was on my path of trying to find an executive coach. And I had actually been meeting with another executive coach for probably 2 or 3 sessions. And then David Deck from Built to Lead, he showed up in my office and we sat down and talked. And within the first 10 minutes, I'm like, yep, this is exactly what I'm looking for. This is what I want to do. Of course, I didn't tell him that. I continued to ask him a whole bunch of questions for the rest of the hour. But it was clear that this is something that I wanted to do. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, Built to Lead and how we've worked this into Wisper and kind of our grandiose plans for what we're going to do. So I'd like to introduce David Deck, and thank you so much for coming on. And
my pleasure.
I think, everybody knows I have dyslexia, so I'm horrible at sitting here reading an introduction. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, David, tell us just a little bit about yourself. Maybe something that's interesting, some little nugget that you have there.
Yeah. Well, I am one of 5 boys. We're all left-handed, and that's a unique oddity. I am born and raised in St. Louis, lived in Chicago for 10 years.
Yeah, we won't hold that against you.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I know. Understood. I'm a teacher by degree. I thought I could change the world in the education system. I couldn't. So joined a family business back in 1999, 2000, and kind of just reinvented myself there, and have some information about how that parallels with Wisper and why I think our hearts are so connected on where I've been, where you are, and where we both want to go.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think it's really interesting to see how some of the parallel paths, even though they were happening at different times, where we've got to, and we'll talk about some of that today. So, talk about this business, which I think is so kind of, I don't know if ironic is the right word, but interesting that you guys were doing something on the internet before it was the internet, before I was even in the internet business.
Right.
But what were you guys doing, and kind of what was your role in part of that?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So my mom got divorced when I was around 12. She remarried a gentleman when I was 14, and he was an entrepreneur. My dad, worked at McDonnell Douglas and had a great steady job. And then she married this gentleman who owned a couple of Athlete's Foot franchises and was just big into entrepreneurialism. So it was really a new way of seeing the world. When I was around 14 years old, we started working in the stores with him. And at around 18, 19 years old, after, my parents had been married for a few years, him and my mom had to file bankruptcy. They had kind of gotten over their skis with entrepreneurialism. It's hard business. And sometimes you can hit it really well, and be hitting triples and doubles and sometimes home runs. And sometimes it bites you, and they got over their skis and they filed bankruptcy. And what was interesting about that time was I was at a school called Trinity College, which is a Christian school, private Christian school up in Chicago, and just kind of laid on my parents, the construct of, maybe you ought to pray about what to do. Your life had been going in one direction, and maybe it's time to think about it differently. And they really took that to heart. And they ended up deciding that they were going to try to open up a New Balance only store. And at the time, New Balance was a $300 million company. Right now, they're a $5 billion. So if that gives you context, he approached them and he said, I think this New Balance concept could work. You have wide sizes, you have narrow sizes, and they're made in the USA. And the owner of New Balance, privately held, said, Joe, but we only have 10 styles. He goes, I know, but I see it. I have an idea. Again, I think this could work. So he got the inventory from them. He got the blessing, even though he had owed them money because, he had filed bankruptcy. They still gave him the money. And he
Wow.
went down and found a store in Chicago that had failed. It was a Foot Locker, and it had closed because of no business. And he's like, I'll take it. And so
Spoken like a true entrepreneur.
That's
a true
right.
entrepreneur. Oh, they didn't get it to work. I can do it.
Correct. And there's just some great stories about his will to make it work, right? And so I was able to watch my family kind of recover in a significant way, but in a new way, in a faith-based way. They agreed not to be open on Sundays. They really tried to do everything with a humble heart instead of thinking about the money and thinking about all the wealth that they were accumulating. And he opened that up in 94, 95, and it was before New Balance ever had a franchise model. It was just kind of like this test that they did on the side.
Wow.
And so in that era, he was literally waiting on a customer. He's the owner. They couldn't afford employees, so he's running the store. And he's waiting on this guy, and it's 1996, and he says, what do you do? He's like, I build these things called websites. And my stepdad, Joe, is like, well, tell me more. What is that? He's like, well, there's this internet, and there's people that are actually building websites that can communicate to people. And as Joe, the entrepreneur that he is, was like, I think we should do one for our store. And he's like, I don't think it'll work. The guy literally said, I don't think it'll work. Yeah.
Wow.
He said people need to try on shoes and it's just too hard to do that. And Joe's like, no, you know what? I'd like you to do. He's like, well, I'll take your money. So in 1997, he started selling shoes online out of the back of a 1,500 square foot store and started basically counting the orders one at a time as they came in.
Yeah. So for non-techie people, back in 1997, your website was awesome if you had a different color background.
Correct.
Right. I mean, they literally, this was before they had the advertisements for websites, right? It was that's so early in the whole scheme of things, before the .com bubble, before all of that. That was very, very visionary as to what he saw was something that could be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was interesting too is also the internet was dial-up. I mean, it was AOL. Like you had to literally wait for the phone to come through and to get on, and we would send our orders through email and handwrite. I mean, it was insane what we did. And so I was teaching at the time. I had just finished playing pro soccer. I had played for 3 years before the MLS was started. I got hurt. I decided to go into teaching, and he called me up and he asked me, would you want to join? And this is in 1997. And I said, I don't know. And I talked to my girlfriend, now wife, who was at Maryville, and she's like, let's stay in St. Louis. I'm like, I'll pass. And he had my brother come on and lead the company at that time.
Yeah. Wow. So take us on to the next one. Obviously, you started this thing before anybody else. What was kind of your journey, and how did that kind of end up bringing you to where you are today?
Yeah. So again, like it was the Wild West of how to do business. There was no playbook. So the most creative, the most innovative, and sometimes the most common sense always won. It wasn't these big majors and expos that you can go to. You just had to figure it out. So fortunately, we had me, two of my other brothers, my stepdad, and one other person running the company. And so it was a sit down and talk, like, what do you guys think we should do? And, at one point I remember us being like, maybe we should add free shipping. And my brother, who is the coder, got on the computer, typed it up, and he's like, it's there. And we're like, wait, what? We can do that now? Right. So what was amazing about that experience for me, and I see it a lot in what I see in Wisper, is the entrepreneurial spirit, right? Like you get to make it what you want to make it. And that is where the secret sauce is. When you don't hold yourself to limitations and what the quote unquote industry is doing, you can do whatever you want. And so
Yeah.
we were blazing trails. We were in Consumer Reports, like the Consumer Reports, as a top 3 internet retail provider. It was Zappos, it was Amazon, and it was us. And
Wow.
we
Wow.
were a $10 million company at that time, and they were hundreds of millions of dollars,
Hmm.
but we were doing it right, with our one brand.
Hmm.
And so that was really our approach in our, I guess, dumb luck. We grew it from, in 2000, we grew it from 1 million to 2008. We were acquired by New Balance at 30 million. And it was a very interesting deal because, when you go back to the early story, New Balance gave us the start, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
They did not have to buy us. We were a franchise, and they could have easily said, you know what, we're gonna take what you have and we're gonna own it now, and thanks for everything.
Right.
But they didn't. They treated us with respect and admiration, and in fact, they even had conversations with us like, listen, this is not a normal acquisition.
Hmm.
We don't know what we don't know, and you know what we want to know, so you need to come teach us what we need to know.
Right. Right. That
Right?
works out well. That sounds good to me.
Yeah, I mean, and it was hard to believe, right? Because
Right.
normal acquisitions, they're
Yeah.
hostile at times, right?
Right. There's a reason I'm buying you and you're not buying me. So
That's
yeah.
right. And
Interesting.
that was not the case. And so, at that point in 2008, we were 32 million. We had about 80 employees, which I know you guys aren't. You guys were at like 10 when you and I started talking, but the same amount of employees. And
Right.
so again,
Right.
I find that parallel very interesting, where we were, and at the time we hired a guy named Chet Scott, who is the founder of Built to Lead, because what we thought we needed was leadership training and development in the sense that most people think about it, right?
Right. Right.
We did
Right.
not
Right.
know what we were getting into. We just thought we need a leadership coach. We're getting acquired
Right.
by a billion-dollar company
Yeah.
now. We
Yeah.
need help.
Right. Right. And talk a little bit about that personal side of why you knew you needed help. What were you searching for there?
That's a great question. So in my life, I have three children who are adopted, and when we went down that path, it was a very clear path for us. We were committed. It was exactly what we wanted to do. But what was interesting that started to happen with me personally, as the business got bigger, as my family got bigger, as life got more important, anxiety came in like a like something possessed. I
Mm,
started to fear more. I started to struggle with, I'm not controlling this, and this is getting out of control. And what if I mess this up? And what if I do something wrong? The stakes got higher. And so
sure.
it was an incredibly amazing ride, but I wasn't strong enough to be able to handle the ride.
Mm,
And so it all came crashing down for me in 2009. We got a call around Thanksgiving to go adopt our daughter from Ethiopia. She's our youngest. And our other two, we got our daughter, our oldest, at 2 weeks. We got our son at 8 months. And now we are adopting a third, and the process is really difficult and challenging. And so we were told we could come to Ethiopia on Christmas Eve. That was when we could go get her, and I remember leading up to that, the overwhelming anxiety and stress I had literally starting to take over my body, like cold
wow.
sweats,
Yeah.
um, not eating well, starting to feel sick. And on that day, me and my wife get to the airport, and I turn to her and I say, I can't get on the plane. And she looks at me like I'm, joking.
Right.
Of
Right.
course I'm not. And I pull her off into an empty gate, and I basically say to her, we can't go. Like, I don't think I can get on a plane. I think I'm going to get sick. And such an out of body experience, because anxiety can do that to you. It can take all this, it can make you irrational.
Right.
And she had gotten on the phone and she had called the agency, which was in Ethiopia. It was Christmas Eve, or it was Christmas morning, and they picked up and she said, "My husband's getting sick. What should we do?" They said, "Come anyway." And of course, I'm just
Mm.
not going to have that. I'm just not going to let that happen, because I can't let my wife go get our child, because I can't. And
Right.
so I told her, I'm like, I'll say bomb if you try to get on this plane. And she knew I was serious.
Wow.
Um, so oddly enough, and in typical brotherly fashion, my younger brother Kevin ends up walking down the terminal with his passport in his back pocket, not any luggage, and says, "I got it."
Wow.
And
Wow.
literally got on the plane with my wife, and he went over to make sure she was cared for and that stuff with my daughter would come home, and he came back. And it was one of the most incredible acts of kindness that I've ever, humbly received. And at that time, that was in 2009. So again, we had just been acquired. You'd think our life was great, and my life personally was imploding. And
Wow.
so enter then in Built to Lead, from a business perspective, what it taught us, and from then a personal perspective, how it changed my relationship with anxiety, was again one of those things where you had to be forged in the pain, you had to go through the struggles, but if you do the work and how you come out on the other side, it's a true catalyst for transformation.
Yeah, and I hear you tell this story, and it's so amazing to me because I know who you are today, and I'm
Right.
like, no way, that's not you. That was somebody else. I can't even fathom that you would have that much of a anxiety over that and everything. So it's just, I know as people get to know you and as we go through this journey together, they're going to look back and be like, that guy was just telling us a story.
Right.
That wasn't really right because it doesn't fit you at all. It wouldn't even occur to me. But that's how amazing this transformation and what built can lead to can do for you,
Yeah.
and that's really really cool that it. So you did that, you started Built to Lead in at your New Balance and everything.
Yeah.
Then how did you get to being on LinkedIn and being willing to be
Right.
my executive coach?
Right. So, I'll tell a little about what Built to Lead does, and I know you have, but I'll use my language now,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how that led us to where we are today. So, when Chet came to our office, he just said leadership is not what you read in books. It's not what it's not this skill set per se. It's about knowing who you are, what you believe, and why it matters, and then living in alignment with that. And I remember sitting there being like, I don't even know the answer to those questions. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
no wonder I have so much anxiety. I don't know who I am. I think I know who I am, but I was identifying myself as a e-commerce manager, and a dad of this, and that commentary just blew me away, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how did I not know the answers to these in at this stage of my life? And so we went through that process, both from a professional standpoint. Who are we as a company? Like, what are our core values? What do we believe in? And are our behaviors aligning? We were doing that. And then I was doing it the same for me. And all of a sudden, the voices of anxiety in my head that would say, you can't do that. I was like, but wait, actually I can. because I am this type of person, and I think these things and I act this way, and this is what I'm good at. And the anxiety went down and the core strength came up. Our employees were unbelievably motivated. We went from 30 million when we were acquired to 100 in 5 years, 100 million in 5 years. And it was without question, because purpose and passion were the
Mm-hmm.
frontmost things in our company. With all of our people, we would tell them, what do you love to do? If you love to do it, go do it. If it aligns enough with your job, we want you to have that fulfillment. And they were thanking us for the work, and the business was there. And New Balance thought they hit the jackpot, because they couldn't understand, how the heck are you guys growing so much? And remember, this is in the down market was
Right.
0809, and we are exploding,
Yeah.
both professionally at work and personally. So we get to 100 million by 2005, And New Balance is continuing to grow, and they're a big company. They're a great company, but they feel like now they need some more structure and some more, we need to bring you guys in. You're a little too out there on your own. And so they started to tell us things that, or I should say, expect things of us that we didn't agree with anymore. And so this was where my core was put to the test, because they wanted to put profit and making money over service, which was the whole thing that got us there. Service of our employees and service of our customers. They wanted profit now to be number one. And so I had to say to them, I think I should step down from this role. I know where I'm at. I know what you guys want, but I'm not that guy. I want to build into people, and you want me to build into the profit. And so I hired my replacement, stayed with the company, kind of stayed off on the side, and remember reaching out to Chet at this time and saying, what if I did building? What if I became a builder and did this for a living? And he said, it's about time. Like, it was it was so crazy, because I was so scared to think about it. But he knew that because I had done the work, because I had turned it into my lifestyle, it wasn't this leadership thing over there. It was a way of living. He knew I had it. And so he started me on that journey back in 2014 as a builder. And then by 2015, I went to New Balance and said, I'm going back to teaching. Wow. And I went to the CEO, and he said, tell me more. And I told him a little bit about, what I've learned along the way. And he said, you'll be great. What can I do to help? And we had a very amicable jump, shift from that role. And I jumped off the corporate ladder. I was 40 years old. I had 3 kids. I had a mortgage. I had all that. And I said, you know what? I think this is what I'm supposed to do. And I learned that through looking into my core, because see, in my core, I believe we're all made. I believe that we're created. I believe that we're designed. I believe it's our choice to become that. And that's what Built to Lead is hoping to do, is help people discover who you were made to be. Right. And once I discovered it, I said, okay, well, either I believe that I was made to build into people and to become partners with people like Nathan in life, not just in work. If I believe that I was made and I believe that's what I'm at, I should do it. And I did it. And my wife was very scared and very skeptical, as I can't blame her, but I bet on it. And then to kind of lay that down as like, I'm going for it, God, like, here we go. And then again, in such an odd way, for me to get a LinkedIn, hey, I'm looking for an executive coach. I'm like, oh yeah, I've read this 1,000 times. This guy's probably, a financial advisor looking to sign me on as his client. And I followed up. I don't think you followed up or followed back up with me the first time, but I followed up again, and the rest is history. And as far as our relationship.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's such a great backstory, because it helps paint the picture of like who you are, right, and why. And I think that's something that I picked up on that first meeting we had was it was different, right? It was just different, and I didn't know what to how to put my finger on what was different about it. Now understanding, it's like, oh, you know who you are, and you know what you like to do, and you're living out your passion. And that's why when I come up with these crazy ideas, you're like, yeah, that fits right in, or no, that doesn't fit in, but here's somebody who can help you. And so I think it's really neat to see that. And then so I've been working with you, and now looking forward to expanding that even more. So let's flip the tables a little bit. Let's have you you kind of interview me. We'll kind of go through our journey. And then we'll kind of bring it all back together at the end here.
Yeah. So one of the things, as we've talked about our lives being parallel at different times, I love some of your stories about the start of your business as well, because even meeting you, when I met you, I had to look up what a Wisp was. Like, I sadly did not know they existed. I don't know what they mean. And I'm like, oh, that's cheeky. Wireless internet service provider. That's pretty cool. So go back to, for me again, like when you started and had this idea, how did that come to you?
Yeah. So I'm kind of like your stepdad, entrepreneur. Right. I had a lemonade stand when I was in summer school. I had employees. I did all those things, and making money always came easy to me, but it was never the driving factor. right? It was always just, well, I thought everybody thought this way. And for Wisper, I had been looking for a business to make money while I was sleeping, right? That was my goal because I was a computer programmer and I was a consultant. But if I wasn't billing out hours, I wasn't making any money. So I said, oh, I want to get into the service industry. And I looked at restaurants and said, oh, that's a service industry. And it's like, well, wait a minute, 95% of them all fail and I hate to cook. So that's not a good idea. And ultimately, it wasn't the service industry I was looking for. I was looking for a utility. And the only utility that was not regulated was internet. So that means somebody like me, a small person like me, could get involved with it. And I had a consulting business for computers, and I knew all the pain points, right? I was like, wait a minute, you have bad internet, you have bad internet, you have bad internet. So I convinced my wife it was a good idea to put $36,000 across 3 of our credit cards, because everybody needs internet, dear. Everybody needs internet, right? And this is back at the end of 2003. And the only thing we know for sure about our business plans is that they're wrong.
Yeah.
And then the other thing we know about visionaries, which I am an off the chart visionary, is that I'm ahead of the curve a little bit on this. So I was probably 3 to 4 years ahead of the real demand. Whereas you guys had a website way before.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
was trying to provide internet before people really understood they needed it and wanted it. And so, yeah, it was definitely, for me, it was an understanding wife that allowed us to start. But it was so much more than that. But I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
Right. For me, I was just kind of like, well, this is an opportunity and I like technology. So I'm going to go ahead and solve this problem. And that's kind of where we got started in our humble beginnings.
Did you, being too early, was there ever a danger of you literally going out of business because you were too early?
I think there was, because it was if I had not been a good programmer and still been able to bill out at quite a few, $300 an hour, and I'd go up to Chicago, I'd live in the guy's office. I'd live on a couch that was literally a foot too short for me, and I would take the microwave out of the little shower they had and live there and work 90 hours in a week. And then I
Yeah.
would come back and we would live off of that. And I think that's something that a lot of people, they miss, and they think that being an entrepreneur is all glamorous,
I
right?
know.
We canceled cable TV. We canceled everything we possibly could. I remember my wife, we had a sit down talk, and she was so upset because she had been to the grocery store for the 3rd time and not had a single credit card she could have bought food with,
Yeah.
because they all declined.
Yeah.
And she told me this actually about a month ago. We were talking. She literally would go out to the car and just cry.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know she was going through that. Oh, to add on to that, our oldest child is 1 month older than Wisper.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
So we had our first child.
Yeah.
She went from having a salary to no salary. I went from having a salary to no salary. But Wisper, failure was not an option. We were going to make
Right.
it through. But man, it was not easy. That's for sure.
But I also know you to know fear is not a factor. What was it that kept you going? If it wasn't fear, what was at the time the unconscious motivation that kept you doing all this stuff?
Yeah. I think for me, I didn't know how to articulate what that was now until I've gone through kind of my core with you and the exercises. But really looking back, it was that I firmly believe that the Lord has a plan for my life, and as long as I'm following it, it'll work out. And I knew that back then, and I'm like, but this feels right. This is what I should be doing. I'm learning. I'm understanding what I need to do. Hindsight, I look back, and my wife's like, yeah, you left the house at 7 o'clock in the morning. You came
Right.
back at 7 o'clock at night.
Right.
And I got to spend 2 hours with you. And then
Right.
from 9 o'clock at night until 2:30 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, I did the admin work and I worked. Looking back, it's like, holy cow, that's crazy. But I felt very confident and very peaceful in the fact that this is what I was supposed to be doing,
Wow.
because the Lord opened up the right doors and made it for me. But I would not have been able to articulate that had you asked me that back then.
Of
I would
course,
have
right.
just said, well, it's just failure is not an option. We will succeed. I can
Right.
see it. But that's all it would have been.
Yeah. No, that's for sure a part of this is we talk about being unconsciously competent, right? Like you have unconsciously incompetent people, you have unconsciously competent people, and the goal
Right.
is to become consciously competent.
Yeah, I
And
love
that's
that.
why we call, Built to Lead, why we call it a discovery process and an awakening process is you just need to go back to those things. It's not new. It's just, hey man, when you were grinding through, what was it that was pulling you on? And then you stop and you think, and you're like, actually, it was because I really felt like I was called to do this. It's like, great, that's it
Yeah.
then.
Yep.
So, so then tell me about when you felt the business start to when you knew it was gonna make it, so to speak, and you started to gain some momentum. What was some of those eras like?
So it was, I started getting paychecks. That was,
That always helps.
3.5 years into it. I'm like, oh, look, honey, here's a paycheck from Wisper. Now I had plenty of times between then and, later years that I had to miss paychecks. And I'm very, very proud to say no one else in the company has ever missed paychecks. I've gone for an entire year missing paychecks because it was just where we were.
Yeah.
But you could start seeing, and I came at the company from a technical standpoint. I was very technical. I understood the tech side of things. I loved figuring that out. And then I realized, well, wait a minute, there's more to running a business than being technical, right? I had solved the hobbyist, right? What antennas to use and what pigtails. And it was kind of back in 2007 when I woke up and said, oh crap, I own a real business, right? I had
Yeah.
17 employees, $2 million worth of revenue. And that means I have 17 families relying on me to make right decisions. This is serious stuff. And we had some highs along the way, right? I mean, we had done a lot of acquisitions, and I liked having all the employees and hiring them and working with new people. But that was a kind of a real awakening for me. I wasn't as dramatic as I would say, like, as your anxiety, where you kind of were like kind of hit bottom.
Yeah.
But it was an epiphany for me that I was like, oh man, I mean, this is what I wanted, but oh crap, this is real.
Yeah.
And I set out to read a lot of books and try to grow as a person, to become the person that Wisper needed me to be, because Wisper would have been great had I stayed at 17 employees, ran everything by the hip. It's just kind of how you feel. It's small enough that, hey, the mistakes aren't that big of a deal.
Right.
But I really set out to try to grow as a person. I always believe in that growth. I have what they call it, the growth mindset, not a fixed mindset.
Yeah.
I can grow into what I need to grow. I just needed some direction. And I started reading about a book a week. I listened to them, but I read about a book a week to try to get me to that next level that I needed to be.
Yeah, and that intrigued me when I met you. Because of your dyslexia, that you listened to books.
Listen, don't, I call it read, but you're right.
At double or triple the speed.
Triple speed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, I don't want to take away your speed, because I know you're a racer at heart. And so you definitely had done the work, and what I think it'd be worth talking about, or you telling, like, when you contacted me, you were at a pivotal point, both from a company. You had just won CAF and were now beginning to strategize about how to grow, but you were also, again, taking on even more of a leadership role. If you're going to go from where you were as a company to where your vision is, take us through that kind of moment in time. Where were you personally when we met, and what was going through your head about business and who you needed to be as that leader that was going to take him forward?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people think that, your entrepreneurial growth, personal and business, is just kind of like this. But it's definitely cyclic. I was talking to my wife and I was telling her, Wisper, this is back in 2009, 2010. Wisper isn't running the way I want it to run. And she's like, well, how do you want it to run? I'm like, I don't know, just not this way. Right. I couldn't articulate what I wanted. I had this vision in my head. This is not the way I wanted to run, but it was. And she kept asking, and I kept reading books, and I would pick out those different things. And we had come across EOS, or Entrepreneur's Operating System, and Traction. And that was amazing. It set us on an amazing journey for the next 8 years. So it's 2010 to 2018, 2019. We're still using it today. I think it's an amazing framework for how to run your business. But around 2018-ish, I kept telling my wife that Wisper isn't quite running the way I want it to run. We were implementing EOS to the best we could, but there was just still something kind of missing. And we started talking about what was missing. And that's when I started looking for another executive coach, because I had one before and I'd outgrown them. Well, then we win Connect America Fund, right? We're an $11 million company, and we win a $220 million government grant to go build out. perfect. That's exactly what we want to do. We love providing service to people. But I knew I needed to change and iterate again, and it couldn't all revolve around me. One thing I had realized that usually I was stepping into areas of the business when they were not doing so well. I would step in and help, and then I'd come back and I'd step in and help. But the company was going to be too big, and way, way too big once we implemented CAF.
Yeah.
And that's why I was out looking for an executive coach. And the executive coach I had found, yes, they had run larger businesses, but not to the scale and not to this fast. And I wasn't sure what was missing. I couldn't tell what was missing. And honestly, when I first sat down with you and I read your profile, I'm like, that seems kind of interesting. But it wasn't until I had that first meeting with you that I realized that's what's missing. And it's the people side. And then I didn't even know that what I was looking for was out there. But as I learned more about Built to Lead, and then as I went through the whole journey of coming up with my core,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I have EOS as my business framework of how we run our meetings and how we do things. And then we have Built to Lead, which is our people side, which I have always preached that Wisper is no different than any other internet service provider, except for the people we hire and how we treat our employees and how we treat our customers. We're usually not the cheapest. We're usually not the fastest, but we love our employees and we love our customers. And having the Built to Lead framework for me was kind of this eye-opening. I knew I was searching for it, but if you'd asked me, I wouldn't have known what I was searching for, right?
Yeah.
And I had to stumble across it on accident. But once I saw it, then it was like, yep, exactly. This is exactly what I want. And it's been an amazing journey for me. And that's why I want to take it and try to share it with our whole company. And everyone should have an opportunity to go through this.
Yeah. When you first started working with me, I think some of the things you told me was you struggled with holding people accountable, and you struggled with follow through. And I know you now have become more clear on your relationship with those. I find that to be worth taking a second for you to just talk about, because I think there will be people who will be watching this who know you before Built to Lead and might say, yeah, man, he was this, and now see a shift in you. What was it in our discussions? Because it started with you. I didn't start working with your team.
Right.
I didn't start working with your people. I said, you got to work on you, and we need to figure these things out. Take a second and talk about those kind of conflicts, how they were resolved through your core work.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest change for me throughout all of this. Yes, I'm better to articulate what my vision is. But I was articulating my vision, maybe not very well, but I was articulating it. And when it didn't happen, then instead of me confronting people, because I'm non-confrontational, right? I figure, oh, it'll all work out. The Lord's got a plan, we'll get it. But it's like, wait a minute. I believe that this is where we need to get to, the vision, maybe not how we need to get there, but I agree with where we need to get to. And, we had in my core originally that I will give people more chances than they deserve to succeed. And I thought about that and said, no, I don't want to be that person. It's who I am today, but I don't want to be that person. What I want to be is I will give people more chances to succeed, or I will give them more chances to succeed than they deserve, but they will be a learning experience attached to it.
Right.
So I was able to shift my worldview of confronting you about your poor performance or confronting you about making a bad decision, from me thinking that was confrontation to me thinking that is a learning. That is a learning experience. And I'm coming to you with love. I'm coming to you and I want Wisper to be the best it can be. And yes, it's up to you to accept what we're talking about. But ultimately, and that has made it so much easier for me, because now I frame it up in my head. Yes, it took practice, right? And I had to do it, but I frame it up in my head now that, hey, this is something that is vitally important to me and who I am and what I want to accomplish. Therefore, I'm willing to stand by my principles and stand by my identity and say, I am going to address this with you. Yeah. I didn't change me. I still don't yell. I still don't scream. I still don't slam my fist. It didn't change any of that. But I still am able to have a much sterner conversation with someone about what they need to do. And I love how you say, put the pressure on them. Yeah. Right. I'm not the one that's changing in this instance. I need to do a lot of changing myself. But in this instance, I'm having a conversation with you, and I need to put the pressure on you to realize what the change needs to be and what you can do. And I think that's been a huge change for me, for sure.
Yeah, when we would have struggling employees, I've told you this story before. I would say to them, "Why are you struggling? And what can you do to work on it?" It was never this is your problem, this is your, like, it was never
Yeah,
from me to them. It was just asking them questions like, are you
right.
happy? And if they said yes, I'd say, well, why would a happy person not be doing this and not be doing that? And you just have the conversation, and then you just ask them, well, how can I help you become more fulfilled? And
And
that's the tension that we
yeah,
talk about.
and I think it's, to go back to this whole non-confrontational, I had discussions with other executive coaches. They were like, well,
Right.
you just gotta stand up and do it. I mean, you just have to do it. And I'm like, yeah, I know I just have to do it, but apparently I don't like to do it. That's why I always put it off. And then working with the Build to Lead and understanding who I am as a person, I changed my worldview of that and what that was. And no longer do I view it as confrontation. Do I still like confrontation? No.
Right.
I will still shy away from confrontation if I can. Oh wait, but I'm not doing. I'm doing a learning one, and that's a really really interesting way that it changed. It wasn't like the coach had me practice confrontation more, so I feel more comfortable with
Correct.
it. You know,
Right.
it
And
was
that's
definitely
why
something totally different.
when I talked about we hired a leadership coach, we thought we were going to get that. Here's how
Yeah.
you have confrontational conversations.
Right.
And
Right.
so if what we both went through is the transformation within, to understand that you don't have to be confrontational to have confrontational conversations. You don't have to be a certain way if that's not who you are. You just have to know who you are, what you believe, why it matters. Why is this then something that you're passionate about bringing to Wisper? Because I certainly consider it a huge opportunity, blessing to be a partner with you. But now we've got 100 plus people who are who are looking at this wondering, well, how does this apply to me if I'm an employee here?
Right. Right. And I think for me, it boils down to one of my original goals and visions that I wanted for Whispers. I always wanted a lot of employees and a lot of customers.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, well, that's, you just wanted to be a big company. And I said, well, no, it was never driven by the money, never driven by saying the status of, well, I have this many customers. It was my ability to affect people in a positive way. My ability to say, hey, you know what, Nathan, you were really, really tough on us, but you changed my life because you had me figure out, and before I didn't know it was the core, right? I didn't
Yeah,
know it
yeah,
was
yeah.
doing this. It was just, I love creating those opportunities for people that make a difference in their life, whether it be the employees or whether it be the customers. And even that saying, creating opportunities that make a difference, I would not have been able to come up with that had I not worked on my core, right? Because
Right.
I would have been like, well, I want to help employees be better, and I want to
Right.
help them, do this. And yes, it would have meant kind of the same thing, but not really. And I think for me, what drives me is being able to see, and I get such a rise when I get feedback from an employee that says, hey, you know, this is the best opportunity I've ever had, or this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. You obviously believe in your employees, and thank you so much for that. And it's just amazing to see. Now I want to take it to the next level though and say, okay, that's great. I was providing these opportunities, but how do I formalize that?
Right.
Really, I mean, I went through a major transformation. How do I help other people? And yes, I want them all to work for me forever, right? I mean, that's my goal. But some people are going to have to leave for one reason or another, right? Oh,
Right.
my mom's sick and I have to move back to California, or something. And I kind of want that reputation that, oh wow, you on your resume it says you worked for Wisper. Oh, hired, right?
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
to see that big, not because we were big, but because we're having that much impact. And I love doing things different than others, not for the sake of doing them different, but because I see them as different. I don't want to be corporate. I don't
Right.
want to be that way. I want to have a large company and prove that you can be non-corporate, and that you can say, hey, you know what? We're all entrepreneurs. We're passionate about what we're doing. And kind of like you said, it's a little bit of chaos when everybody's doing it in their passion because they're passionate about it, right? But that's
Yeah.
good. And
Right.
that's what we want to do. And I'm so excited to be able to build this out and give everybody an opportunity if they buy into it.
Right.
Because if they don't buy into it, it doesn't matter how much I want it, it has to come from them. And I'm willing to give you a little bit of time to figure out that it has to come from within.
Yeah.
But it has to come from within. But we're going to give you the tools and help facilitate that for sure.
So when you think back of how, I did love that you had Wisper University before I met you. You're passionate about educating not only, your employees, but the industry. And here we sit today, and now we've found each other. What's going to change for your associates specifically and within the industry where Built to Lead is going to be applied?
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you look at that. We have Wisper University, and if I had my way, we would give away all the classes to anybody who wants to come to them. And I get a lot of pushback from my leadership team and my
Right.
CFO especially, right? And he's like, "Well, why in the world do you want to do that?" Well, I couldn't articulate it before. Now I can say, well, because what I want to do is create an industry and help build it and help mold it. And the way for me to do that is to offer what I have, the resources I have to help others do that, whether it be our employees or whether it be non-employees, but people want to join. So we're going to be setting up some virtual training and going through kind of working on your core. We'll have a class on working on your core. And I say a class, it's going to be like a 90-day class. And then we're going to have these virtual meetings that we have, and we're going to open that up to anybody. You watch this video, we'll have things down in the chat or in the comments where you'll be able to know how to log on to these. And we're going to open up to anybody to come through. Wisper is going to be making sure we have the resources available to do that. But it's just something I'm so passionate about because it's amazing to look back. And I know I won't see it right away, but in 20 to 30 years, when I'm long retired and I run into somebody and they're like, "Hey, I'm the CEO of this company, and it's all because of what you told me I could do. I started as one of your installers."
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But we're going to open it up to everybody, and all of our employees will be going through it. But we're also going to allow people from the outside to go through it as well, and just see where it takes us. It's part of my passion. It's part of your passion, and we're aligned, and we're hoping to look for other people that are passionate about growing themselves, having a framework to do that instead of just a willy-nilly way to do it, and growing with others. Right? We're going to make mistakes. We're going to figure stuff out together. But I think there's something really positive happening here, and this is kind of the start of who knows what it could be.
I know.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be great. All right.
Sure.
Well, thank you so much for your time, David. I know we're gonna get to see lots more of you. I can't wait till you can actually travel and come see me in the office again and everything. But
I know.
our team, we'll do that. But thanks so much for your time and being on, and we
My
appreciate
pleasure.
everybody who is watching. And please check out the information. Send us your information, and we'll include you in everything we're doing. But remember, this is on you, not us. So you need to put in what you put in is going to be what you get out. But we're going to help facilitate that and do what we can. So thank you very much for all your time today, everybody.